right. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining the Fighting in Finance podcast. Really appreciate your time. For those of the audience members who may not know anything about you, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your background, how you got started in the industry, and we'll kick things off?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me. I sort of fell backwards into this business at a young age. So I was going to school, big state school down in Virginia, Virginia Tech, and they had a really good program for for business and engineering. And I was sort of floating through the business school, taking generic classes and that sort of thing. And I found finance as a passion, and then within the finance department found financial planning. They had sort of this track that you could follow, CFP track, and so that was really exciting for me. And I leaned into financial planning from a very young age, and really was taught, the right way to do it, in my opinion, which is sort of comprehensive, client first, try to reduce conflicts as much as possible, go deep and broad across all topics. And, that's really where my passion for helping people began. And sort of it was the perfect blend of analytical and interpersonal, right? So I'm a very outgoing person, love working with people, and also love going deep on spreadsheets and markets and, tax strategy and liquidity events and that sort of thing. So it's a good blend of those two. But I've been working with RIAs for my entire career. So I've been in the business for 13 years and been at various places, both solo shops, bigger regional RIAs, and then also in the technology sort of startup world for a bit. Was doing sort of wealth management in the startup ecosystem, trying to solve that issue for both people that are more tech inclined, and also people that don't have as much money as for the traditional wealth management firm. So I'll stop there and can talk about where I'm at today with my current firm and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. So, how long have you been with your current firm?
Coming up on 2 years in May. So I've had a little bit of a disjointed path to get to where I am today. Really for years, I was just a service advisor, right? I was just working in these big multi-billion-dollar RIA firms that had a very defined sort of associate track, and you're learning the business and supporting lead advisors. It really wasn't until maybe 4 years ago that I really started to actually bring on my own clients in that lead advisor capacity. And really over the last 2 years is when the business development engine is really ratcheted up with content and with specialty niche. And so yeah, I work under a $2 billion firm, just have my practice within a 20-person organization here in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Very cool. So on that marketing piece, obviously I found you through X, and you're one of the big financial advisor, experts, if you will, on the platform. How did that get started? How long have you been doing that? And are most of your incoming leads coming from that funnel?
Yeah, good question. So I never in a million years thought social media was going to be an option for me. We all hear about the compliance challenges and things, but I was lucky enough to be at a firm a few years ago that was very tech forward and social media forward, and they kind of let me do my thing within the confines of sort of don't say things that are going to get us in trouble, and don't promise performance metrics and that sort of thing. But I had 180 followers in 2023, and I just dusted off my old Twitter account from college and said, well, I have all this knowledge that I've learned over the last 10, 11 years. I'm just going to start regurgitating it literally every day. So I've posted literally every day for the better part of 3 years, sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a day. 180 turned into 300, turned into 800. Once you get to 1,000, you're going, okay, now I don't feel like I'm shouting into the void as much anymore. It was uncomfortable, right, to post and receive 0 likes, right, and maybe 1 like, 2 like. But I think people realized, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He does have some niche expertise, particularly around equity compensation. And then I also speak to advisors, right? So I'm definitely an advisor's advisor when it comes to that audience. And so now I have almost 16,000 followers a couple years later, and I've gotten at least 40% of my 1.2 million in recurring revenue from X and LinkedIn directly. Really more skewed towards X. I really don't get a ton of business from LinkedIn, and I've had to take a lot of people from X who were not good fits, right, and just say, hey, this, filter them through the process. I've gotten better at sort of pre-qualifying before they even get to that stage, but it's a outstanding lead funnel, and really, really happy that I decided to stick with it even when it wasn't so fun.
Yeah, and I commend you on the content that you put out because, as I'm sure you're well aware, there's a lot of personalities or influencers, not only on X, but just social media that give such horrible advice, almost blatant, tax fraud
Malpractice, yeah.
type of advice. And they may be great marketers and they can build a following, but from someone who lives and breathes tax strategy and investment planning, when I see those, it just rubs me the absolute wrong way. So it's really refreshing to see you put out really good quality content. And I also commend you on the daily posting. I know that that's a grind and it requires consistency. But obviously, it's done well as a great investment in your marketing.
I appreciate that.
Now, from the funnel source of the marketing, the X followers, what is the onboarding process for a prospective lead to come find you and then ultimately book a meeting and potentially see if they're a good fit for working with you?
Sure, absolutely. So it's gotten a lot better, right? So as my content's improved, because my first content, a couple of years ago was pretty bad, right? There was no structure to it. There was no visuals. There was no hooks. There was no, really was more of a, hey, if you're an advisor, you probably love this stuff. But also, if anybody's going to reach out, it may not be somebody who knows what I do or how I do it or what my target clientele is. So my funnel process is there's a Calendly link in the bottom of my X bio, and it just is right to my mutual discovery meeting. So the 30-minute mutual discovery meeting can't be booked until you fill out, I think it's at least 5 things. So, name, cell phone number, net worth, how did you find me, what are you looking for in a comprehensive advisory relationship, and I think like a couple other qualifiers, like what do you have? Select all that apply to you: equity compensation, business ownership, tax needs, family planning. And so by the time they at least book that meeting, I have a pretty good sense of whether they're qualified or not, just from those kind of initial high level things. And sometimes if it's somebody who's borderline, I'll still take the call anyway, right? I like talking to people. I'd much rather have the call and then decide we're not a good fit and make a good impression rather than just, dismiss that person outright. And then from the mutual discovery meeting, I mean, that meeting is really at most 30 minutes typically. I really don't like to go super deep until I know that either the person's like not just fishing or not just looking for stock picking or something like that. So 30 minutes, personal and financial, right? I want to get to know what they're looking for, personality style. And then the next step after that is what I call the quadrant experience meeting. So I want them to leave that second meeting knowing what it's like to be a client of mine. So I'll actually solicit some data. Nothing overwhelming, pay stubs, tax returns, investment statements, maybe equity download if they have stock compensation. And after that meeting, typically is when folks sign or they don't sign. So at least a couple hours of work in between those 2 meetings. And for me, I think it's a really good chance just to show what my capabilities are. And the clients that sign after that meeting are really locked in, right? They know exactly what I would invest them in, how I think about their goal situation, how I think about their equity compensation, what my firm's philosophy is around investing, what we can and can't do, Schwab and Fidelity. There's really no surprises, right? And you talk about like longevity of relationships. I'd much rather take more time up front and have a longer, stickier
Sure.
client relationship than rush into it and have people be disappointed right afterwards.
Awesome. Now, for clients or for prospects, I should say, who maybe are on the fence after that second meeting, do you offer them a potential third, fourth meeting, or do you just say, hey, listen, this is where kind of the free advice ends. We're going to need some sort of retainer or agreement in place? Because obviously there are a lot of people who waste time and just kind of try to
Right.
milk,
Get all the free advice.
milk you
Yeah.
for as much as possible.
It
Yeah,
hasn't happened too much, honestly. I'm very lucky. And I think you can get a sense at that point, because hopefully my open kimono in that second meeting and all the cards on the table, both from a fee perspective and from a sort of here's what we're going to do, is enough for them to either walk away, right? Not everybody comes on, or it's enough to be like, yeah, let's get going. And I think this is exactly what I thought it was going to be, or maybe it's even more than I thought it was going to be in terms of value prop. And there have been a few people, like I'm talking to somebody this afternoon who we've already had that second meeting. He's noodled on it for a while. He's had some other advisory calls, and now we're going to see at the end of the afternoon sort of where he stands as of today. There might be a fee conversation, whatever the case is. But I think
got it.
because of the social following and a lot of those people that come from that source, there's already some element of hey, I know who this person is. I'm very open on X, as you've probably seen,
Yeah,
personally and otherwise, right?
sure.
What you see is what you get. That's how I was raised, and I'm sure my firm would love it if I probably kept it a little bit more straight down the fairway. But there's nothing controversial, right? It's mostly, hey, here's my family, here's how I'm struggling as a dad, here's how I'm trying to make things work with clients and fees, and not all of that is perfectly canned.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love speaking to advisors who I think align with my philosophy on doing good work for clients. And I'm curious for those prospects in that second meeting, are you going through kind of like a eMoney, Money Guide Pro financial plan and modeling different capabilities, or are you just talking about potential investment strategies or all of the above?
Yeah, it's soup to nuts on the topic matter. In terms of depth, it's really where I think they need the most consulting in real time. I think I don't necessarily do a full financial plan from a long term, like, hey, here's your 10 or 20-year plan. It's more like, here's your balance sheet, here's your detailed cash flow from what I understand it. Here's, how I would think about, because a lot of people, as you know, come to us with these like very pointed things, right? Like, oh, we need to buy this house, or we need to sell this business. We need to go through this liquidity event for a tech company, or I'm just married, or I'm just having my second kid, let's talk about those things. So trying to double click on those items as much as they want, but I don't necessarily have enough data to do that long-term retirement analysis. And so I kind of preview, it's like, hey, this is what we would do. We'd go super deep on this eMoney plan, which is what I use. I also present their portfolio analysis as a snapshot as of today, just, hey, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. Here's what we would potentially propose without knowing exactly what we do, because it's all custom and led by the plan. And then we do holistic plan reports for tax, just making sure they understand their tax situation, opportunities there. And then the other materials are just like, hey, here are our best investment ideas. We're not the market timers. We're not the individual stock pickers necessarily, but here's the products and solutions that we think would fit for you. And here's how it might be different than either the firm down the street or you doing it yourself at Vanguard, right? Which is candidly who I'm selling against mostly is DIY folks, right? Sure. Really smart, sure, educated people who are doing it themselves and just either reach like this expiration date on their DIY status, or they're just, confident because we've had this 15-year bull market that doesn't seem to ever want to end, right?
So very common conversation, right?
But it's fun, and I'm unbelievably transparent on fees and strategy, and I'm like, if you want to go try to do this on your own, please do it. But if not, let's hit the ground running and let's get some stuff done.
Great. With regards to the investment management, are you guys doing your own in-house portfolio management, or do you outsource to third-party managers? And I ask this selfishly because I'm at a point in my career where I'm trying to figure that out, right? I've historically always outsourced my money management. And obviously there's a little bit of higher fees, and a lot of my clients are asking why we're paying those fees. So I'm contemplating bringing it in-house. I've managed my own portfolio and I've done very well. And I feel like after 20 years, maybe it is time, but I have reservations. So I'm curious what you and your firm are doing on that front.
Yeah, great question. It's really, dealer's choice, right? We have a huge menu, and I think, that's one of the benefits of working for a firm that's been doing it for a while. Our original founder started the company at Merrill Lynch like 25 years ago. 10 years ago, they broke away to go more the independent route. So Quadrants in its existence has been around for a little over 10 years. And so we just have a deep menu with various investment companies. We have a huge relationship with BlackRock, and so they give us a lot of good access to their ETF and mutual fund portfolios that we then tweak and sort of turn into what we want to see in terms of allocation, liquid alternatives versus beta market exposure. We use custom indexing, which I think has been really powerful, especially for my high tax clients in high tax states.
Absolutely.
So direct and long short. We use Aperio. Again, really good relationship with Aperio and BlackRock. So I never want a client to come to me and say, I need this solution for XYZ, and we don't have access to it, right? It doesn't mean we need to be this conglomerate, slop of a grocery store of investment management, because I think you can't do everything well. But, to an extent, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want infrastructure exposure, or hey, I want to do this AI thematic thing, or I want, liquid Bitcoin exposure through the ETF universe, we should hopefully be able to have a solution for that. Or if I have a concentrated stock position, I have, and want to do options overlay, we use SpiderRock, right? So we are leaning on these really big institutional players, and hopefully we have good pricing on that such that the cost benefit still makes sense. And then we do alternatives. I think there's a lot of debate around liquid and illiquid alternatives. We do both, right? And I think it just depends on the client situation. We do have bespoke relationships with some middle market private equity firms in the Philly and New York area, but also we use the huge players, right? The Blackstones, the KKRs, the Carlyles,
Yep.
only if
Yep.
it's right for the client. And each advisor at our firm, we have 9, is able to tailor their investment philosophy and use the menu that we have. So there's
Got
one
it.
advisor who's really heavy into stock picking and covered call writing, and I don't do any of that, right? So it's really like, what do my clients need? What is my personal philosophy, and how do I want to spend my time?
Very cool. The concentrated stock position, you mentioned a company. Are they implementing a covered call strategy, or is it a different strategy to unwind those
So
positions?
it's either covered call, protective put, or you can combine the two to make a collar. And they also have a fourth option, which is the exchange fund replication. And again, we want to have, like, if somebody comes to me and wants a traditional exchange fund, we're using either Goldman or Eaton Vance, and now there's this new player called Cash, which is a new tech solution for traditional exchange fund, right? Contribute the stock, get the basket of stocks back in 7 to 10 years. The options overlay, we decide whether it's covered call or protective put, and then SpiderRock is doing that typically neutrally, such that if we were ever to get called away, we're either rolling it, or if the client's happy to get called away at the strike, then we're happy to get called away. We sometimes pair that with the long short on the other side, right? So if there's a huge amount of embedded gain, there's a whole bunch of options, right? Exchange fund, opportunity zone, 351 ETF exchange, all these different things now have come online. But for me, I found a really good option being covered call, income generation, and taking some idiosyncratic risk off the table on this side of the house. And then on the other side, harvesting a ton of losses by using long short, with that sort of leverage overlay.
Very cool. What does your current tech stack look like at your firm?
Yeah, great question. I've been an eMoney Power user for years. I've used MoneyGuide Pro. I've used Right Capital. Not as much. I haven't had much exposure to Right Capital, but
Yeah.
for me, eMoney does everything I needed to. And it's, we're all creatures of habit, right? So I'm most
Yeah.
comfortable with it. I know the
Same.
scenarios I can run, and I fly around that thing. Clients are like, well, how do you
Same.
do this?
Yeah, I get that
I'm like,
same.
well, I use it every day and have for
Yeah.
years. But eMoney's great. We use Addepar because of our private investment offerings. It's just a much cleaner system for
Mhm.
reporting on private alts, especially capital call funds. And then I use Holistiplan for tax report or tax analysis, and I also use Monarch Money for cash flow. So
Okay.
most clients
I
have
never heard
at
of
most
Monarch
3
Money.
things to log into: eMoney, Addepar, and Monarch. But I try not to have them just overwhelmed with different portals to log into. And I think it's
What
my
is
job to kind of report back to them based on those things.
Sure. Curious about Monarch. I've never heard of that. How does it differentiate itself from kind of the cash flow design in eMoney?
Great question. I think the core difference is Monarch's only product is cash flow, whereas eMoney, it's kind of like
Mm,
just a part of their
yes.
overall offering. Are you familiar with Mint.com? You remember when Mint.com was really big?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
first product manager from Mint.com left shortly before I think it was deprecated and basically put away by Intuit. He went and started Monarch Money, and it's just a really clean daily or monthly or annually cash flow tool. Think like if Quicken came into the first century and really got like very clean UI and very clean reporting. So I use it
Got it.
personally. Several of my clients use it. I pay for their subscription through an advisor membership, and I've had great
Got it.
feedback. It's really nice.
Okay. I'll look into it. Now, my next question relates to a product update. You may have heard from eMoney. They're having this co-planner being rolled out March 25th, which I was really excited about just to kind of potentially use their beta version. But it also leads me to a concern that I have. Many of my friends in my group chat may not have the same concern I do. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Obviously, AI is a big topic of conversation, and the fear of it taking over a lot of white collar jobs. And CoPlanner is within eMoney essentially kind of a tool that you can use to just make the plans as opposed to you and I manually creating those ourselves. So, in some sense, it's probably going to add a ton of value, but my fear is that when does it swallow up potentially our industry? I'm curious to know your thoughts, your potential fears, and what your kind of outlook is specific to financial advisory business.
Absolutely. Well, you actually taught me something. I had no idea that this was coming. So we'll have to see if
Yeah.
do you have to be at like the top of the top membership to get that rollout?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're at the top one. We might be at the second from the top. Either way, Yeah, I have a very interesting perspective on this because my clients work at some of the top AI labs in the world, right? So I have clients at Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta, Amazon, and then some startups that you probably haven't heard of that are kind of in this nascent, AI stage. And
Hmm.
so if these people are still hiring me, at least for right now, I feel pretty protected in my job security. Thinking longer term, which I try to, I was raised on technology. I use it for everything in my life and my career. And so I believe heavily in sort of not doing the deceleration necessarily and leaning into the acceleration. But I think leaning into the human element, I think is going to be more important than ever. That's not a new novel concept, right? I think we all realize that, our, there will always be bespoke tax planning, estate planning, insurance planning, and even investments, right? I take issue with the fact that a lot of our industry thinks investments are being commoditized or have already been commoditized. In some ways they have, right? Yes, you can go 10 different places right now and get a really low cost ETF portfolio that's diversified, right? And auto set it and forget it. But I think there are still some things that are absolutely institutional and bespoke that we can do that other people can. I think the relationship aspect, I mean, again, my clients are so smart. I'm sure you have brilliant clients as well. They still come to me for almost everything, right? And even
Hmm.
now, where I'm
Hmm.
saying that could have been a pretty quick Claude ask for you, and you still
Yeah.
took the time to email or call me. My Anthropic client who's going through the tender offer right now is now richer than he ever imagined, and there's some real emotional issues with that, right? Is how do I think about this opportunity to cash out 8 million when I have 22 million invested right now? And should I be taking the max off the table? Should I be doubling down and taking out loans to exercise more of my options just so that the future tax rate is lower? All these things are highly emotional, and Claude is
Hmm.
incredible, right, at doing some of these things. I've been floored by what it's been able to do,
Same.
particularly in the last few
Yeah.
months, right? As things have exponentially gotten better. I just think there's still going to be that need to have a sounding board. I think spouses not on the same page is always going to be, imagine sitting down with
For
your,
sure.
your, your spouse and going, yeah, Claude said we could, we could do this.
Yeah.
And, at least my wife is naturally looking at me going, okay, I need to trust but verify this guy.
Yeah.
And I just went through it literally a couple weekends ago where I was meeting with a couple and they're doing huge renovations to their property, and I just don't know if they're on the same page about it, right? So
Mm.
and we're a little far away from that AI being able to sit down with two human beings and get them on the same page about money and life and charity and kids. And so I think that's where our job will be very, very valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So this is my 17th year as an advisor, and much similar to your founder's kind of career path. I started at Merrill Lynch and then started Strand Life about 10 years ago. But one emotional component to my job, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is a lot of it is the analytical presentation, which fairly simple, right? I mean, we're experienced enough to be able to spit that out without too much thought. But one thing I'm noticing is that a lot of my clients who are fairly wealthy, they've done a great job of accumulating assets, but they've been diligent about being frugal and presenting them the numbers and saying, "Hey, listen, it's time now to go out and enjoy your
Yes,
wealth." Getting them to spend is a much bigger problem than I originally thought it would be. Are you having those kind of same issues, and how do you address those?
definitely, definitely. And the first 7 years of my career really spent in the traditional 55 and older sort of wealth management space, and I saw it firsthand, right? Where it's old habits die hard. My parents are recently retired, and they were depression era children of people that didn't have a
Hmm.
lot of money, and so those money scripts are so deeply ingrained that it's really hard to flip, right? And so I think we can show them the numbers all we want. We can continuously coach them to say, hey, if your recliner breaks, like go buy a new recliner. Right?
Yeah,
You can afford it.
yeah,
My parents are going through a kitchen renovation at one of their little places, and I'm going, go with the upper echelon, if only if you want to, right? Because you can clearly afford it. I'm their advisor. I can tell them that very
sure.
confidently. And I'm going, if this is going to make you happy, this is what you should do, right? Or if this is going to add value to your life. I think some of my clients have the opposite problem where they kind of have this paper net worth that's exploded, and they're already living life as if that paper net worth has been realized.
Mm,
But I think you're absolutely right.
yeah,
People need the freedom and the permission to spend, and sometimes it's not always immediate, but with the right coaching, and I think as you show people the numbers over and over again, they start to believe them even more because software is great, but it's only as good as the inputs. It's only as good as the market returns. It's only as good as the sequence of return risk, as you know. So I think just that continuous behavioral coaching is massive. And I think, high performers, in my client's case, they overthink things, right? They try to perfectly optimize for life and career and fitness and relationships. And sometimes I'm just going, chill, right? Let's relax, enjoy this
Yeah.
moment. You did make it in some of these cases where you're sitting on the precipice of like a $10 million wire hitting your account in 2 weeks. Let's think about this, right? Like, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for your spouse? Are they in on this conversation around how to use the proceeds? Like, maybe don't rush into buying the $3, $4, $5 million house right away. Let's let the money settle. Think about it. How are we investing? How are we sitting on cash? How are we coming up with the tax reserve? I mean, that to me is one of the most. And I notice you have your exit planning, designation. I
Mhm.
think that to me is one of the most fun exercises, is taking someone through
It is.
that process all the way through to spending and enjoying the proceeds.
It is. Yeah, on that subject, so I have I have a small low volume business. I've got maybe 60 households. And simply because a handful of my clients are very demanding. They're very wealthy. And a couple of them are planning to have nine-figure exits sometime in 2027. So for them, there's a lot of preparation before that. We've been planning for years for these exits. Um, One issue that I've come into contact or come into recently with them is they haven't been able to feel the sense of urgency that I have. And I'll give you a kind of a detailed example. Maybe you can um, begin to understand. So, because of the estate tax, obviously, we're trying to do certain valuations on their estate, currently take advantage of discounting and get as much out of their taxable estate. So, it's a very cumbersome process. You have to get a valuation expert, value their firm, value their estate, gift certain shares of the business to, so it's a very long process. And we've gotten kind of caught up on certain stages of that. And they haven't expressed the same level of urgency that I have. And I'm not doing it for selfish reasons. I'm trying to make them aware that this is, timing of these things is very pivotal. I noticed that you guys have kind of family office services, and I'd like my business to kind of gravitate towards that. So, my question, long winded, is how do you kind of put your foot on the pedal and try to get them to move without obviously rubbing the relationship in the wrong way?
Yeah, it's the question, I think, at that level. My largest client now is probably 25, 30 million. I think if we valued one of his businesses, I think it'd be closer to like 80 or 90. But I think the hardest part is, or the easiest maybe for us to actually help with, is reducing the friction in logistical ways, right? Like, I want to be able to be the one to schedule the meeting with the estate planning attorney,
Mhm. Yep.
literally provide them everything I can up front, and make it so easy on the client that literally they just have to show up to the meeting or show up to the Zoom, in my case, because I work with a lot of clients remotely. So how can we reduce the friction? How can we reduce the anxiety by doing all that pre-planning? And I know you've done a great job, and literally it is just a matter of like the horse drinking the water at that point,
Yeah.
and getting that meeting scheduled, getting those decisions made. But they're
Yeah.
really hard, right? These are like multi-generational wealth questions. Sometimes the people's kids are so young, they have no idea how they're going to turn out, right? And so adds another
Exactly.
layer of not knowing how their
For
children will turn
sure.
out, not wanting to foster that entitlement, and not ruining sort of their chance at building their own thing if they're transferring a
Yeah.
business or something else. So I think just reducing friction wherever possible, reducing the anxiety, trying to for more analytical clients, like showing the numbers behind, like, if you do this, then this will result in your tax savings over your lifetime, or your estate tax savings, or your charitable philanthropic bucket ballooning up to millions of dollars. And as you know, there's so many fun strategies when you get to that level of net worth.
Yeah.
What I find sometimes is the person who's in the maybe 0 to 25, $0 to $50 million range, who is not fully realized, and so they don't really think of it as theirs yet. But there still needs to be a lot of really good planning, right, in case that
Yes.
does happen. And I think nowadays people are anxious about making irrevocable decisions, right, about
Mm,
estate planning or charitable endeavors that are really hard to reverse, right? So in a
for
very
sure.
uncertain world with AI and global conflict and all these different challenges, fiscal concerns, like should we be doing those irrevocable things now, or should we just kind of wait and see? And that's really hard to overcome.
It is. That's exactly what we're talking about right now. I just got a CRUT design back from one of my providers, and how I try to figure out how much I should recommend for them to put in. Obviously, I try to understand what their goal was, right? But trying to figure out what dollar amount of their exit should we put into a CRUT or an irrevocable trust, and backing into kind of their living expenses and then solving for that, I have found to be kind of the best approach. But it is kind of scary, right? Because there is a potential risk that if they pass away, all of that kind of is gone. And so you have to layer an additional strategy, maybe some life insurance to protect that. So it can get very complex very fast. But I love it at the same time, because I always learn something new. It's just trying to get past that friction of, hey guys, we need to make the move
Right.
ASAP here.
Yes. And I used to work for a multi, like I wouldn't describe Quadrant as a true, we're not set up for like in-house tax. We're not set up for in-house bill pay or in-house estate. But I have worked at a firm in your neck of the woods in LA that was a multifamily office, and we did have in-house estate. We did have in-house tax. We did have in-house bill pay. We had clients, who were nearing $1 billion, right, in net worth, and they just outsourced everything to us. And so in some ways that was great, because literally there was nothing that we didn't know about. We're literally paying people's bills and preparing household general ledgers. We're coordinating renovation projects and sending wires to contractors as they're doing. It was unbelievable full service, and I've never been a part of that before or after. But at the same time, when the clients came in, I wasn't the lead advisor at the time, but you kind of feel like a boardroom almost, right? Like there's tax people in the room, there's estate planners in the room, there's financial advisors, there's investment folks, and the couple is sitting at the head of the table, and you're just kind of feeling like a corporation, right, at that point. And it can feel somewhat impersonal at times, and so it's harder to like dig into their psyche and say, okay, what are they really thinking about, caring about, philanthropically, legacy wise, with their children, grandchildren. And so obviously those relationships build over time. But that was my personal experience in kind of the family office MFO space.
I'm so interested in that because of these exits. I have been trying to plan for that next step for them and setting up a family office and trying to figure out what would that entail from staffing from my perspective to meet their goals.
Yeah.
So
the single family
can you
office
just
is a
maybe,
whole different beast, right? Do you
yeah,
follow Mr. Family Office on X?
I
Yeah,
do.
he's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's great. So if you were to kind of coach me or just give me some advice, what would be kind of the top layer of planning I would need to do from a staffing perspective, from kind of a technology perspective, to be able to meet the needs of these family office services?
Yeah, I think our MFO is sort of a microcosm of maybe a big family, a single family office. And I think the core functions, obviously you have to have a big investment team, right, that can go deep and broad on privates and very, very bespoke things that, I came across things that I wasn't even aware of that even existed, like how to buy a tugboat that goes up and down the Mississippi River that spits off tax-free yield because of some old legislation that
Sure.
happened back in the in the
Interesting.
50s. And so these things just came up because of research. And so I know there's a lot of thought leadership around like how do you structure an investment committee at a single family office, who's doing private alts, who's doing venture, who's doing private equity, who's doing the liquid sort of beta stuff, who's doing cash management, or is it all the same person and they just kind of feed up through the household? I think there really does need to be sort of wealth managers in that group, someone who can quarterback all the different people. And so for
Yeah.
us, it was always 2 wealth managers, 2 investment advisory folks, 2 people from tax, and 2 people from legal. That really covers a ton of bases, right? Oh, and 2 people from bill pay. So I
Yeah.
think the bill pay, if I was coaching you, I would say be very careful about implementing that at scale and saying, okay, I'm going to hire these full-time people to pay bills and do credit cards all day, because it's a very low satisfaction job. And it's something that can go south in a hurry. We actually had one
Very
of our
bad.
employees
Yeah.
quit, sort of entry level, lower salary type person. They left and started writing themselves checks out of our largest client's pocket account. Like, talk about something that can blow up almost $1 billion relationship overnight.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
like theft, right? You can literally
For sure.
act on behalf of the client, signing things, sending wires without their authorization, because we had power of attorney, right? We had the actual capability to do anything, which is a blessing and a curse, right? It could be a really,
Yeah.
and the tax piece, right? It's if you're not a tax firm, bringing tax in-house can be the kiss of death, right? It's just such a laborious task around filing season, around quarterly estimated payments, year end. So if you can't execute on particularly those two things, it can be a very tough thing to do internally.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, good to know. I was already scared. Now I'm even
Sorry.
more. It's
I mean, talk
it's
about
just
being a
kind of part
one-stop
of it.
shop, though, and I think you can do it in a way that's thoughtful and execute well for a couple families. Like once you try to do it for 100 families, then you
Yeah.
really need like a company of like 100 people, to try to do that.
Yeah. Well, luckily it's a it's two families, 50-50 owners of a business that's going to be $1 billion exit, both of which are my clients.
Wow.
So I'm hoping there might be a little overlap that I can kind of streamline the process, but two different relationships as well to manage.
Sure.
But again,
You could also
it's a good
partner with,
problem to have.
with a larger company and say, hey, I'm going to
Yeah,
lead the relationship and I'm going to utilize your infrastructure for XYZ and pay them a retainer.
for sure.
If you didn't want to mess with all the internal, I think that's another good option.
Yeah, I probably will go down that route just because, at this level of wealth for them, they're also rubbing shoulders with uh, people with great opportunities on the venture side, which is not my area of expertise. I don't claim to know it. So I don't want to be able, I don't want them to miss out on capitalizing on that
Of
potential
course.
capital appreciation. So yeah, that's something I'll figure out. But the last question I have for you, and I appreciate your time. I'll let you go. I know you got a busy day ahead of you, but who are some of the kind of the other social media, X, Instagram, Facebook advisors that you follow, kind of like I follow you, that you think are great? And on the flip side, if you're open to naming some that you have seen that just kind of give bad advice, what would those names be? And feel free, I
I
don't
try
want to
to
put
put
you on the
those out of
spot.
my line of sight on the
Yeah,
daily basis. I even deleted TikTok. I can't be on there anymore. A, too
good.
addicting, and B, just a lot of garbage financial advice.
Right.
The people I really respect and have interacted with quite a bit are folks that look and sound a lot like me, honestly,
Hmm.
but they're very different in who they serve. So Jacob Turner is a really great account. Yep,
Baseball, right?
former ninth pick in the MLB draft, and now runs a really,
He's
really
great.
great, fast-growing, legitimate advisory firm out of St. Louis with his brother and a team there. Thomas Koppelman, really great guy out of Indiana,
I love Thomas too. Yep.
really good at
I
business
follow him.
owners, also serves tech clients like me, doing things the right way. Matt Gottschall out of Ohio,
Okay. Never
he's in
heard of
Cleveland and coming into his own on social media, but is just one of the better planners that I run into in terms of doing it well. He also came out of a CFP program and was kind of indoctrinated into this from day one. So Matt Gottschall, he's at Balanced Wealth Group out of Ohio. Who else? In terms of social media facing, Max Pashman, Zach Mello, I can rattle off a whole bunch.
him.
Who else?
Are these all on X or are they just
All
different
X, yeah, all
platforms?
X for the most part.
Okay,
Travis
nice.
Gatzmeyer. There's a lot of really good sort of planning first type folks that I really respect, and they put out regular content pretty darn regularly. I'm sure I'm missing a
That's the
few.
key.
In terms of accounts that I wouldn't listen to, I mean, there's all the
Mhm.
dividend accounts on X. I think
Yeah, yeah,
you can kind of write off all the anything with like FI in the handle. You
yeah,
can
yeah.
probably write off, but with some exceptions, I just think the X payout. And I've even gotten monetized, which is nothing I can write my mortgage out of. But it's made things a little bit worse, as you've probably seen, and just in terms of like, if I shout the loudest, if I shout the most controversial thing, it's going to get the most eyeballs, therefore increase my
Engagement. Yeah.
X payout. So I really love that filter now, where you can actually swipe up on your For You page and uncheck all the things that you don't want to see. I literally just found
Mm-hmm.
that within the last week. So I unchecked, some of the war stuff and some of the political stuff. It's just helpful to clean up the For You page in some way.
Very cool. All right, last question. I promise this is the last one, but how are you dealing with fatherhood now and still being able to put out the content? Because you've got, how old are your children? Or do you have
So I
one
have
child?
a 19-month-old daughter, and my son is going to be due in less than 20 days.
Wow,
Thank you.
congratulations. So two under
Two under
two.
two. So
Yeah, I went down that route. So
how old are your children?
God bless you. Five and
Good for
six,
you.
almost 5 and 7. Yeah,
Don't tell
two
me about
girls.
how hard it gets. That's one.
Listen, honestly, just to be
Yeah.
upfront, it's going to be rough the first couple years, but I can tell you, you'll get through it. You'll be fine, and it gets a lot easier. And looking back at it, having gone through it, it was
But yeah,
beautiful. But while you're in the thick of
you
it,
wish you want to have
it's
it
you're
back.
gonna
Yeah,
have,
you wish you had it
yeah,
back.
it's a beautiful
I
thing.
I it's been challenging, right? I talk to a lot of my clients are having children. It's a really fun demographic. Like my average client age is 40. And
Nice.
so, you are dealing with people in their 30s, 40s, and just having all these life events at the same time, which makes it really
Yeah,
busy, but also really rewarding because you're all kind of all commiserating around how much sleep you got
sure.
last night and how fun it is to see them grow up and do those things. I think for me, it's time management. I serve people really, really deeply. And so being thoughtful around like my time and energy as it relates to client service, as it relates to the advisor stuff that I'm involved in, right? I host office hours. I try to connect people with jobs if they want. I just try to give back to the industry because it's given me a ton. So being thoughtful around that while still leaving enough time in the mornings and in the afternoons to be like fully present father mode, husband mode. My wife's a rock star. She's a stay at home at this point and really,
Beautiful.
really appreciative to her for letting me do my thing as much as I can. But I'm home at 6 at the
Beautiful.
latest every single
Good
night,
for you.
and I really don't work much on weekends. So I'm balls to the wall Monday through Friday from 8 to 6. I do some work late at night to try to catch up, and very early mornings. This morning I was up at 5, but it's just what you have to do
Yeah,
because I really do want to grow, and I'm not really satisfied with kind of the status quo, and I want to maintain that level of service with clients. So it's just a balance, right? And
yeah.
taking care of mind and body too, right? I've let my workouts really take a hit. So I posted something last night that got some steam where it's like, if you wanted to do everything, you'd have to wake up at 3 a.m., right? It's just
Oh, that was
literally no
hilarious.
time to,
Yeah,
to do everything. So you got, I have to remind myself that, things are going well, don't kill yourself. Also take time for mind and body, work out, eat right. But it's, so much time in the day, as you know.
yeah. Well, man, I'm so happy for you and your family. You've got a great thing going. I'm honored to have you on the podcast. You do great work. I really appreciate fellow advisors who kind of have the same mindset that I do of serving the client first. And just tell people where they can reach out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. On X for the most part, Mark Cecchini. So Cecchini is the handle, just first last name, no spaces. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. So same name, same spelling. I really do need to like kind of expand my social media following, but I don't do YouTube or X or I'm sorry, YouTube or video or TikTok or Instagram. But maybe that's the next frontier if I
Mhm.
need to hire a videographer or something like that. But
I think you do great. I think you do great on camera. You do great on X. And I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
I
Thank you so
appreciate it. Thanks
much
so
for
much for having
everything.
me.